crashes. It's the moment in most motorsports that usually is avoided, as well as being far and few between. Monster trucks, however, are filled with them. Over the span of Monster Jam's tenure, monster truck crashes have been shown to millions around the world through the Crash Madness DVDs, compilations of some of the most gnarly and craziest crashes in Monster Jam history, as well as the countless online compilations aimed at doing the same thing, and some of which are still available to be watched on YouTube to this very day, and have garnered millions of views. But the debate still remains surrounding the question, what are the craziest and most memorable crashes of all time? Well, join us today as we answer that question. Without further ado, here are the top 10 most insane and craziest crashes of all time. Before we start, a couple of things to take note of. We are going to be ranking crashes based off of two things: the levels of destruction or damage done to the truck, and how memorable it was. Secondly, with it only mentioning 10 crashes, not all crashes are going to be on this list. If you'd like to see a second installment with 10 more crashes, let me know down below. And finally, all crashes are from Monster Jam and/or USHRA promoted shows. Independent shows or crashes from the Pender Point series or the TNT Monster Truck Challenge will not be included, but maybe in a future video. So if you'd also like to see that, let me know down below. Without further ado, let's get into our list. Number 10. Boogey Van Pontiac 1995. Starting off our list is one of the more iconic and older crashes on this list. Boogey Van was a prominent truck in the 90s. The unique Astro van body and iconic paint scheme made it an instant classic to most fans. Pontiac 1995's Power Jam event was notable for it being one of the few events that contained a long jump competition. This saw drivers put their foot to the floor and try to get the longest distance in their trucks. One of those drivers at this show that attempted to get the longest distance was Pam Vale in Boogey Van. She would launch off the set of cars before losing control on the concrete and slamming straight into the wall. Pam actually had to stay in the hospital for a few days after the crash as she was really hurt. The crash was featured in the original Crash Madness compilation and featured in the Pontiac 2004 racing episode on Speed TV. Number 9. Gravedigger, Detroit 2018. 2018 is a vastly overlooked year. This would be one of the last years that multiple stadium tours and arena tours were run before they cut it down to what they do now. However, Stadium Tour 4 got to witness one of the most insane, crazy, and unbelievable crashes in Monster Jam history. Randy Brown was having a great run that was filled with big air and great momentum. After nailing the backflip, he goes to the corner of the stadium before full throttling to the step up and trying to go from one end of Ford Field to the other. However, the truck left the ground angled slightly, which caused him to completely tear the front end of the truck up and shed the body completely off. Despite the damage he caused to the truck, it was at the end of the run, and this netted him the freestyle win. Brown was okay after this crash and definitely became one of the more memorable moments in modern Monster Jam history. Number 8. Avenger World Final 7. This list truly wouldn't be complete without mentioning one of the many crashes that Jim Cola has had throughout his illustrious career. World Final 7 might be one of the most underappreciated World Finals, despite being one of my favorites, and it contains some of the best action that Monster Jam has had to offer. The event also had numerous new designs, which included Cola's brand new chrome body. The 2003 World Freestyle Champion hit the track in freestyle with a vengeance, hoping to claim yet another world title. Those hopes came crashing down quite literally when Cola attacked the pond jump, which saw him get a weird angle and nose down right in front of the camera for TV. Many were in shock, especially Scott Douglas and Ken Stout. In the footage, you can actually hear the body crunch when it hits the ground.
See the rear of that thing. Oh no! Around. It's kicked him off. I have never seen a truck leap like that, and I've seen a bunch of them.
Once again, Jim Cola was okay after this crash, and this moment became so memorable that it actually became the cover art for the DVD release of World Final 7. The chrome body has never made an appearance on the real-life circuit since then, probably due to the fact that it was so costly and that the original body was completely destroyed at this show. Number 7. Titan World Finals 15 Qualifying. Of all competitions, you wouldn't necessarily expect that a huge crash would come from qualifying. Well, in most cases, you'd be wrong. However, this crash deserves to be mentioned. During Donald Epidendio's first main field invitation for the event, his throttle would get stuck coming down Thunder Alley during his qualifying pass. Because of this, all Epidendio could do was hope he didn't get hurt. The truck would end up having a head-on collision with the dumpsters. The crash completely totaled the truck and hindered him unable to use his original truck for the rest of the World Finals. He did, however, borrow BJ Johnson's Mohawk Warrior chassis and run that for the show as opposed to his own. The chassis would later be rebuilt and compete for several more shows throughout the year of 2014. But this one was definitely one of the more nastier crashes the sport has had to offer. Number 6. King Crunch US Truck Fest 1997. To most, this crash probably has fallen under the radar, and from a glance, it may not look that bad, but the story surrounding it will make you think twice. The US Truck Fest was an event that ran in 1997 and resembled a World Finals type of event, due to the number of trucks that competed in it and the format of the show. Speaking of which, the format of the event was quite unique. Trucks were split into two divisions, the Monster Truck Challenge and the IMJ Championship. The top 10 best of the season competed in the IMJ Championship, while the rest competed in the Monster Truck Challenge. King Crunch was one of those trucks that competed in the challenge, and was set to race Survivor in the quarterfinals. The truck's rear end springs up as one of the shocks gives way, while Scott Stevens continues to accelerate up the last set of cars. When the rear tires finally settle down, it's on the ramp leading to the cars, resulting in the back tires to spring up once again and eventually tumble the truck forward quite violently and completely total the truck. The crash was so bad that it actually retired the chassis, as it was so damaged beyond repair. Thankfully, Stevens at that time was working on a new chassis, but this one was completely totaled. Stevens did not leave the truck completely okay, but he wasn't seriously injured. He did have surgery to fix a hernia in his stomach after the crash, but said that it didn't hurt too badly whilst in the truck. The crash was featured on the Inside Monster Jam episode covering the Truck Fest event, as well as being featured in the original Crash Madness DVD. Number 5. Monster Mutt Dalmatian Ice All-Star Challenge 2019. The Monster Jam All-Star Challenge was one of Monster Jam's more unique and exciting events, and also the last Monster Jam event to be held at Sam Boyd Stadium. The event pitted two teams of 12 drivers against each other to battle it out to see which team was better. Team Fire and Team Ice fiercely battled throughout the weekend, but no competition was more competitive than freestyle. The wide open and unique freestyle track gave drivers the opportunity to really stretch their legs and try something new. In an interview on the NBC broadcast episode, Cynthia Gauthier talked about how her run at World Finals saw her prioritize filling time and pulling off the backflip, yet she received a low score when others had huge but ultimately shorter runs and got a higher score than she did. So, she had a plan coming into All-Star Freestyle. Go big or go home. Do that for every hit, and whatever happens, happens. And go big she did, putting the foot to the floor and fully sent her truck up the backside of the backflip ramp, flying through the air before crashing down in spectacular fashion. Amazingly, she was okay after the crash due to the advancements in monster truck technology. A crash like this from any other point in time could have ended in a much different story. This was the sole reason why the 30-second rule was introduced to freestyle later in 2019 and 2020 to beyond, as she would almost win freestyle with this single move. Her crash would become synonymous with the event, and the clip of it on YouTube has over 102,000 views. Number 4, Bakugan Dragonoid World Finals 20. World Finals 20 was one of Monster Jam's more polarizing World Finals at its time. It was subject to a lot of criticism due to the fact that it was the first officially numbered World Finals to not be hosted in Sam Boyd Stadium, but rather Orlando, Florida. The event's freestyle tracks was one of the more interesting that the World Finals has had to offer, but also one of the more unforgiving. Camden Murphy's run was one of many that numerous people consider championship-worthy material, with great air, a backflip to moonwalk, and generally keeping the pace going throughout. In the closing moments of his run, he would send it off this jump. However, his truck would start to nose over in a strange direction, before smashing down on the front axle and tearing it almost completely off. When the truck had settled, the axle was facing upside down, something I've never seen before. This moment has been one of the more destructive moments in Monster Jam history, and there was a point in time where Camden Murphy became known for shredding axles because of this moment. Number 3, El Toro Loco World Finals 5. Lupe Souza has only driven Max D once, and that was filling in for Neil Elliott in Arlington 2015. He should have become a Max D driver sooner simply because he caused some maximum destruction at World Finals 5. I'm sorry for that. In racing, he would roll over, shredding the body up, and made it his mission to impress in freestyle. The run, for the most part, was quite shallow and nothing exciting really happened. That was until the closing moments of the run. Lupe was lining up for a big finish, which saw him smash through the container jump, only narrowly missing Creedon's truck, nosing up before landing down, wheeling over the van and snapping the axle from the chassis. It was this moment that most likely helped him earn his first and only world championship. It's a shame though that he didn't hand in his resume to Tom Meents, because I think with that crash he would have fit the Max D team just fine. Number 2, Captain's Curse World Finals 10. Yet another crash from Monster Jam's most prestigious event, and it's probably one of Monster Jam's most infamous. While no real damage was done to the truck, the moment has garnered huge attention even still on various social media platforms. Alex Blackwell, in just his second World Finals, had taken Captain's Curse to the championship race against Tom Meents. In almost a similar instance to Titan's crash, Blackwell's truck had lost its brakes during the race. However, rather than crashing into the wall, which keep in mind this event didn't feature the dumpsters guarding the wall like what happened with Titan, he tumbled in the area where drivers make the turn to finish and then into the stands. Thankfully, it would crash into the tarped off stands aimed specifically for this purpose. The original upload is not available, however a re-upload of the original video does exist. The crash garnered huge attention on YouTube when it was originally uploaded, though there are alternate angles that show just how close this crash was from being a whole different story. However, despite the virality of the clip on YouTube, it has been mostly hidden by Monster Jam. The crash never was featured in their Crash Madness DVDs or part of their home videos and TV broadcasts for the event. The only exception to that rule is being the European airings, which we've talked about numerous times. Still, this crash remains to be one of the more infamous crashes on this list. Before we take a look at number 1, here are some honorable mentions that didn't quite make the list. An Escalade, Saluda 2008. This An Escalade crash to some is quite obscure. The crash featured the truck tumbling forward in some what would call the first true front flip. Blue Thunder, Pontiac 2002. This crash was at the untelevised show at Pontiac, though was featured on Crash Madness 3 and the 2004 Pontiac Freestyle episode. It saw Tony Farrell ride out a slat wheelie that saw him balance from one rear tire to the other before violently flipping and landing on the dumpster. Bulldozer, Houston 2002. On the second Houston Astrodome TV episode of 2002, Bulldozer would be part of a nasty crash. On the uniquely styled Chicago-style course, Bulldozer would make a charge for the finish before nosing over, shredding the body off, and totaling the truck. Brutus, Atlanta 2006. During freestyle, Chris Bergeron would lose a shock that would directly result in this crash. After sending it off the FMX hill and landing on the ground, would rebound hard and tumble over, completely dismantling the rear of the truck. And our final honorable mention is Medusa from Philadelphia 2012. In almost the same instance as Grinder from Philadelphia's 2011 show, Medusa would leave the racing lane extremely crooked and slam down on the front axle, shredding it off completely from the front of the truck. Her crash was so bad that she could not compete for the rest of the event. And finally, number 1, Maximum Destruction, Arlington 2011. It wouldn't be a complete list without mentioning the master of destruction himself, Tom Meents. Arguably his most notable and recognized crash was at Arlington 2011. During freestyle, Meents would be having a typical Tom Meents run, with a great save after almost completely rolling over, however made the save and tearing the body off in the process. His truck was damaged, having the right front wheel almost constantly locked up. At the end of the run, he would hit the side of the jump, nose over sideways, before shredding the axle completely off. Not to mention the huge fireball that erupted from the truck as the chassis stood straight up with Meents still strapped inside, putting his hands at the window in true excitement. This moment was named as Tom Meents' number 1 Max D moment in 2013, and was not just featured in Crash Madness 7, but would also be on the cover for it as well. Not to mention 2018's Max D 15th anniversary pit party setup at World Finals featured a recreation of the truck in its crashed position. This moment is hands down Monster Jam's most iconic and craziest crash of all time. And well, that's all we have for today. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and I'll see you all soon with some more Monster Truck content.